Alexander's desire to pursue Persian tradition slowly evolves into a life of hedonism.
He clearly saw himself as a god, and he was being treated as a god.
Alexander now began to imitate the Persian luxury. He dressed himself in a white robe and a Persian sash. He added concubines to his retinue in the manner of Darius, in numbering not less than the days of the year and outstanding in beauty. Each night, these paraded about the couch of the king, so that he might select the one with whom he would lie that night.
Alexander could better cope with warfare than peace and leisure. As soon as he was free of these worries that beset him, he yielded to dissipation, and the man whom the arms of Persia had failed to crush fell before its vices. There were parties early in the day, drinking and mad revelry throughout the night. It was a general decline into the ways of the foreigner. By affecting these as though they were superior to those of his own country, Alexander so offended the sensibilities and eyes of his people that most of his friends began to regard him as an enemy.
His long-sought conquest of Asia complete, Alexander continues to want more. In early 326 BC, he begins a campaign in India, where King Parsis attempts to stop him at the river Hydaspes. Alexander's forces find themselves fighting an enemy not riding just horses, but elephants. While the Macedonians prevail, the contest is the most difficult they have fought.
A consequence of this battle with Parsis was that it blunted the edge of the Macedonians' courage and made them determined not to advance any further into India. At first, Alexander was so overcome with disappointment and anger that he shut himself up and lay prostrate in his tent. His soldiers crowded round the entrance and pleaded with him, uttering loud cries and lamentations, until finally he relented and gave orders to break camp. Alexander was now eager to see the outer ocean. He had a large number of oar-propelled ferries and rafts constructed, and was rowed down the rivers on these at a leisurely speed. But his voyage was by no means a peaceful affair.
As Alexander travels downstream, he will land, assault the cities near the banks, and subdue them all. Then comes the walled city of Mali, home of the independent tribe of Malians.
Alexander neared the city and thought to take it by storm. One of the seers came to him and reported that there had been revealed to him a great danger which would come to the king from a wound in the course of the operation. He begged Alexander to leave the city alone for the present and to turn his mind to other activities. The king scolded him for dampening the enthusiasm of the soldiers, and then, disposing his army for the attack, led the way in person to the city, eager to reduce it by force.
Alexander stationed his infantry in a ring around the outer defenses and moved up in close formation. The defenders took refuge in their inner stronghold. Here, they continued to resist, and not without success, for they turned and fell upon a small party of Macedonians, driving some of them out again and killing about 25 before they could get away. Alexander, meanwhile, brought the scaling ladders into position all around the inner stronghold.
For Alexander, leading the charge to take on the enemy at Mali in 326 BC is nothing new. The wound he receives is but one of several he suffers on the fields of battle. But for the seemingly invincible warrior, this injury is different. Alexander's troops realize it is life-threatening.
Immediately, the rumor ran through the camp that Alexander had been killed. Meanwhile, his attendants, with great difficulty, sawed off the wooden shaft of the arrow and thus succeeded in removing his breastplate. They then had to cut out the arrowhead, which was embedded between his ribs. When it was extracted, the king fainted away and came very near to death. Even when the danger was past, he remained weak and for a long time needed careful nursing.
Slowly, Alexander recuperates. During the next 2 years, he heads his army west back towards Greece, half by land, half by sea. In July of 324 BC, Alexander suffers an even deeper hurt. His close friend Hephaestion dies of an unknown illness. Alexander is devastated.
We are told that Alexander flung himself on the body of his friend and lay there nearly all day long in tears and refused to be parted from him until he was dragged away. Some have said that he had Hephaestion's doctor hanged for giving the wrong medicine. All the accounts agree that for 2 whole days after Hephaestion's death, Alexander tasted no food and paid no attention in any way to his bodily needs, but lay on his bed, crying.
Less than 1 year after Hephaestion dies, Alexander rests in Babylon, planning a possible conquest of Arabia, when he too becomes ill. During a 10-day period, what begins as a mild fever evolves into a mysterious, life-threatening illness.
The soldiers were passionately eager to see him. Some hoped for a sight of him while he was still alive. Others wished to see his body, for a report had gone round that he was already dead, and they suspected that his death was being concealed by his guards. But nothing could keep them from a sight of him. And the motive in almost every heart was grief, and a sort of helpless bewilderment at the thought of losing their king.
It is at this critical moment when the enormity of Alexander's influence is acutely felt by all who know him.
It is my belief that there was in those days no nation, no city, no single individual beyond the reach of Alexander's name. Never in all the world was there another like him. And therefore I cannot but feel that some power more than human was concerned in his birth. I have admittedly found fault with some of the things which Alexander did. But of the man himself, I'm not ashamed to express ungrudging admiration.
It is also at this moment when Alexander's officers begin to question what will happen if Alexander dies. Who would rule the conquered territories? The prospect of ruling such a vast empire without Alexander is a daunting one. There is no doubt among Alexander's officers that no single human being could ever take his place. The territories would have to be divided. They also know that if Alexander himself does not proclaim who will inherit which regions, fierce jealousy would rear its ugly head, resulting in wars between the very leaders who fought united under the banner of one mighty king. The death of Alexander the Great brings to a close a conquest never again equaled by any warrior at any time in history. The statistics alone are staggering. One man leading 40,000 soldiers by foot and horseback, more than 20,000 miles over 12 years.